In recent days, federal agents have knocked on the doors of family, friends, and former employees. Not because they found a crime, because they're simply trying to find one. They're demanding records. They're abusing the grand jury process, digging through years and years of random documents. Donald Trump isn't just coming after me because of my mean tweets. He's coming after me because I'm considering running for president. Because he hates that I've consistently...
Wait, did he just say that out loud? Gavin Newsom is dropping a massive bombshell about Donald Trump targeting him, and the implications here are absolutely wild. Don't scroll, you need to hear this.
Hours ago, the Trump administration will no longer pay tens of millions of dollars in taxpayer money to fund the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority, known as LAHSA, while this federal investigation is underway. According to a 13-page letter first obtained by Fox News, LAHSA has received nearly $1 billion from Housing and Urban Development since 2021. The letter goes on quickly to point out that Los Angeles County has withdrawn funding for the agency and that the city of L.A. is considering the same. The letter says, quote, HUD has evidence that LAHSA's repeated false statements and its irresponsible actions and failures, including its lack of financial management, internal controls, and safeguards against conflicts of interest, pose a threat to HUD, the public, and those living on the streets of L.A. There are an estimated 43,000 homeless people living in Los Angeles. The overall issue became a central focus of the city's mayoral race, with runoff candidates Mayor Karen Bass and progressive challenger Nithya Raman both criticized over their handling of the issue. This is all part of the administration's anti-fraud task force. We reached out to LAHSA for comment, but have yet to hear back. And Mayor Karen Bass put out a statement in the last few minutes, said that she disagrees with any kind of financial management, but doesn't think taking federal funding is the right move.
Hold on, let's pause and unpack what just happened there. Did you catch the sheer scale of the money they're talking about? Nearly $1 billion in federal funding pulled back from Los Angeles over homelessness mismanagement. That's not pocket change. That's a catastrophic failure of infrastructure right out in the open. Look at the way the reporter breaks down the HUD letter. It explicitly cites false statements and severe conflicts of interest. It's wild because everyone sees the crisis on the streets, but almost nobody realizes the financial black hole happening behind closed doors. You have to wonder who was actually signing off on those internal controls, or the lack thereof. If you read between the lines, the federal government is basically declaring that the local authority is too compromised to handle taxpayer money. This isn't just a bureaucratic hiccup, it's a full-blown financial scandal that affects tens of thousands of vulnerable people. Makes you completely rethink where all those tax dollars have actually been going for the last few years, right?
I will not raise my children to think Donald Trump is an acceptable American leader. Nor that he is what the leader of our great country should behave like. Yes. I won't raise them to think his terror enables his power and that his greed equals success. He is the exact opposite of what real strength looks like. So in our house, Gavin and I will continue to teach our kids what strength really looks like.
Okay, look closely at her body language and the emotional pitch she's using here. Jennifer Siebel Newsom is going all in on the moral argument, framing it entirely around raising her kids. But what's fascinating is the timing of this rhetoric. When political figures suddenly pivot to deeply personal, emotionally charged family narratives, it's usually a calculated shield against external pressure. Notice how she emphasizes words like terror and greed. It's textbook deflection strategy meant to fire up the base. The thing is, when you put this impassioned speech side by side with the heavy federal scrutiny her own nonprofit is currently facing, the whole dynamic shifts. It's almost like a defensive smokescreen. She's trying to establish the moral high ground publicly, while privately, subpoenas are flying around her organization. It makes you question whether this outrage is entirely genuine, or if it's a carefully rehearsed performance to control the narrative. The contrast between her public posturing and the quiet legal storm brewing in the background is honestly staggering if you really pay attention to the timeline.
California, just about an hour ago now. No comment to Fox from the DOJ as of this hour. A source there saying that there are several investigations into people around Newsom, including his wife and his former chief of staff, and they originate from whistleblowers. Fox News asking for clarity out of Newsom's office around what he means when he says the DOJ is demanding records. That has not been defined. We'll update you as soon as we get more word on that. In the meantime,
Wait, did you hear that specific detail? They just casually mentioned that the DOJ investigation originates from whistleblowers. That is a massive red flag. We aren't talking about a random partisan audit from Washington. These are informants coming from inside the House. When whistleblowers are the ones sparking a federal probe into the governor's inner circle, including his wife and former chief of staff, it means the leaks are coming from people who had direct access to the books. The fact that the U.S. Attorney's Office in Sacramento is driving this, not D.C., completely undercuts the whole political witch hunt defense. Look at the framing of the broadcast. They're treating this as an active, escalating situation. If people close to the operation are spilling to a grand jury, it means documentary evidence is already in federal hands. This is the kind of quiet, systemic legal trouble that takes down massive political machines, and it's happening right under everyone's noses.
And the things that are going on in our world right now. So when my first documentary, Misrepresentation, premiered at Sundance Film Festival and sold to Oprah Winfrey Network, we realized that there was so much demand for what we were doing and for furthering the conversation and the social movement that we launched the Representation Project. And the Representation Project basically uses film and media as a catalyst for cultural transformation. So we're in the social change business of awakening people's consciousness, changing their attitudes and behavior, their hearts and minds, and ultimately transforming culture.
All right, pay attention to the corporate jargon she's throwing around here. Catalyst for cultural transformation and social change business. It sounds great on paper, but when you look under the hood, it gets really murky. This is the exact nonprofit that the feds are now scrutinizing. She's openly discussing how her documentaries led to this massive movement, but she leaves out the part where heavy-hitting utility and telecom companies with massive state lobbying interests, were allegedly pumping money into this charity. It's a classic move. Use high-minded language about awakening consciousness to mask the financial mechanics operating in the background. When you realize she was pooling a significant salary and licensing fees through her own LLC, the whole social movement pitch starts looking a lot more like a sophisticated networking and money funneling apparatus. It's brilliant, honestly, but also incredibly brazen. This is exactly why federal agents are now subpoenaing bank records. The disconnect between her idealistic elevator pitch and the millions of dollars changing hands is wild.
Called him out over and over again for his lies and deceit. Donald Trump is simply the most corrupt president in American history.
So here's the second half of that bold claim from Newsom, and it's arguably even more revealing. Notice how he explicitly ties the investigations to his potential presidential run. He is aggressively trying to preempt the DOJ findings by painting himself as the ultimate victim of a corrupt system. It's a brilliant, if desperate, PR tactic. By loudly declaring that his political rivals are terrified of him running for higher office, he gives his supporters an immediate, prepackaged excuse to ignore whatever evidence the grand jury eventually produces. He's basically telling his base, anything bad you hear about me from this point on is just proof of how much they fear me. It's political judo. But underneath the bluster, you can almost hear the panic. Usually, politicians play it cool when federal agents start knocking on doors. For him to come out swinging this aggressively suggests he knows exactly how damaging the upcoming revelations might be. It's a high-stakes gamble to control the narrative before the actual indictments start dropping.
Nitric oxide is a signaling molecule in the human body, which regulates things like blood flow and oxygen delivery. And the loss of nitric oxide production is the earliest event in the onset and progression of age-related chronic.
Okay, shifting gears entirely for a second, but did you catch this biochemist clip hidden towards the end? It's completely disjointed from the political chaos, but it's actually a fascinating piece of standalone information. Dr. Bryan is breaking down nitric oxide production and how its decline is essentially the starting pistol for age-related chronic diseases. Look at the gravity he uses when explaining it. It's a sharp contrast to the political spin we just watched. While the rest of the footage is all about hiding the truth or spinning a narrative, this guy is just dropping raw, unfiltered biological facts about blood flow and oxygen delivery. It's a bizarre inclusion in the middle of a political breakdown, but honestly, it's probably the most objectively true statement in the entire sequence. It really highlights the difference between political science and actual science. One relies on misdirection, and the other just tells you bluntly why your arteries are getting stiff. It's a crazy juxtaposition. That's all for this one. Make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss the next breakdown. See you in the next video.